Hello, hello. If you are interested in becoming a better writer, a better communicator, a better content creator, you do not want to miss this episode of Create for No Reason because my guest is what he does. That is what he is all about. And I'm so excited to chat with him. If you are new to my channel, hello, I am Kate Volman. I share lots of content to help people live a more creative and fulfilling life. I share book recommendations, journaling prompts, lots of fun tips and tricks. So if you're interested in that kind of content, check out some of my other videos and subscribe so we can stay connected. Today, I'm so excited. So, I've been live streaming my podcast for a few months. It's been really fun. I love getting to see my guests in person, or not as close to in person as we can get. And I'm so excited to introduce you to someone who I just recently discovered online. It is Don Martin. He is an author of the books The Dabbler's Guide to Witchcraft and While I Wait to Be a God Again. Such a good title. He is also the host of the podcast Head on Fire, a search for answers to life's biggest and smallest questions. He currently lives in the suburbs of Chicago with his husband and their many pets. And you can find him online at Head on Fire Pod or in the corner of coffee shops, feverishly completing his debut novel. So I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Don Martin.
Hi, Kate. So nice to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. I am very much looking forward to our conversation because, like I said, I recently discovered you over on TikTok, and you right before we got on, I said, Don, you are such an eloquent speaker. He is like the most well-spoken person on the internet. And you're such a creative individual. So I kind of want to start with, how do you describe yourself? Like, how do you describe what it is that you do?
Oh gosh, that's a weird that's a weird answer, mostly because I think as my profile sort of gets bigger and as more people discover me, I have been likened to a lot of people, like Hank Green but blonde, or just I don't know. I'm one of those weird people that sort of grew up in the early days of the internet, millennial, and have a lot of different interests. I don't have just kind of one thing that I do. Sometimes I wish that I did. I have friends that are visual artists, and I would love to just be a visual artist or just be one thing, because I feel like you could go really deep in that. And unfortunately, I am an incorrigible, insatiable weirdo that just wants to try absolutely everything and do a little bit of everything. So yeah, I guess that's it. I'm an incorrigible weirdo.
That sums it up. That's interesting that you say that, because I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine over the weekend, because it was kind of the same argument. I thought, those people that they are so good at this one thing, like, what is that like? Because I feel like I'm the same kind of, I have all these different interests, but who's to say if it's better or worse, right? It's just what is fulfilling to you. And it seems like you're living this very creative, fulfilling life, and you get to dabble in all these things. So that's that's a beautiful thing, that someone who maybe does one thing is looking at it thinking, wow, I want to be more like Dawn and give myself the opportunity to explore more.
I think the best advice that I could give anybody, because social media is, for good or for ill, seems to have become an indelible part of our lives. We need it as much as many of us would love to delete it off of our phones and go away forever. We need it. That's how we find one another. That's how we build community. That's how we get messages out. And that's how we let other people know that we're doing things. But I think what a lot of people struggle with is trying to make the algorithm like their thing, their one thing. Oh, I had one viral video about a painting 6 months ago, and I sold a bunch of paintings, and now I can't, now only 20 people see my content, or something like that. Like, they get really pressed about trying to be one thing. And my best advice for people is to be a human first. it's okay to be a person, to be a full person, because you're not just one thing. Even if you are a visual artist, even if you're a painter, even if you're an amazing painter, you're not just that. You're a person. You have hobbies, you have other things, you have skills, you have pets, you have loved ones, you have other stories to tell. And I think that the reason that I am finding success or have found any kind of success is that I decided a few years ago that I was going to give myself permission to be a whole person. Especially this year. 2022 was the year where I said, you know what? I am going to just throw away all of those, like, you have to be a niche, you have to be this one thing. Throw away all of that rule book and just say, I want to be my whole self at all times. And it seems to be working out.
Oh, I really love that. What do you have parameters or anything? I mean, how do you decide what kind of content you're going to create? What do you decide you're going to share versus not share?
So I have a few different platforms, which I think is important for people to have. Sorry, it's a little hot here. I think it's important for people to have multiple outlets, because multiple outlets let you do different things. TikTok is a good example. TikTok's been a cool way to kind of get to express, I don't know, comedic parts of my personality, or get to do a fun skit, but every now and then you get to do something that's educational or informational, or something like that. But different platforms let you do different things. Instagram, Twitter. But I have a podcast that lets me go really deep into interesting, often overlooked subjects that I think people either already think they know everything about, or have never even considered. So I get to talk to different experts in those really cool niche fields. And that's really cool. And that serves part of my personality, and that helps fill my cup up. Because when the writing is really slow, or when the ideas aren't coming for something else, I always have that to fall back on. And I think that's sort of important when it comes to, like, what content should I create? To always have different outlets for your creativity, because when one thing isn't really going well, you have other wells to draw from. And I think that that's really important, especially for folks that are, that their main thrust is a thing. Most people get on social media to try to sell some part of themselves. I'm a small business. I own a coffee shop, and I want to drum up business for my coffee shop. And the place to do that these days is social media. But the thing is, the most successful small business accounts that are able to get those customers in are also showing what their employees are doing off their schedule, off hours, what else is going on in the community, that kind of thing. So I just think it's important to not necessarily consider, like, what content am I going to create, but what does each of those platforms give me the opportunity to do? So something might be, Twitter is a place where I can engage in conversation. TikTok, something where it's like, oh, that's weird. Let's go talk about that for a couple of minutes, like that kind of thing. So just recognizing that different things give you different opportunities to have different kinds of conversations.
Do you like one platform better than another?
No, I will say I hate whatever Instagram is becoming. I hate that. I was talking to a friend and fellow author, Christine Platt. She wrote The Afro-Minimalist Guide to Living with Less. And, we were kind of lamenting the fact that Instagram used to be like food pictures and, like, just a quick snapshot into your day. People did one post. It was one post a day, and people literally apologized in the caption if they did more than one post a day. It was like,
oh my gosh,
it was a square and it was your dinner, or it was a square and it was just like you posing next to a museum you went to. It's just something like that. And I realized that got to be a little too curated and a little too perfect and a little too fake and all of that. But I hate whatever Instagram is becoming, where it's trying to be all of the apps all at once. I
Mm.
feel like they're about to add a chat feature so that it can be like Twitter or something like that. It's just, it's trying to be too many things, and I hate it. But everything else is just sort of like, it has its place. I don't know, if I'm watching a TV show and just have a random thought about it, I'm not going to like stop what I'm doing and go make a TikTok. That's probably a tweet, that kind of thing.
Got it. Although I do find it to be very interesting, social media. You'd said in the beginning we need it, but we would probably want to delete it. Like, so talk about that. I mean, I feel like some people are, it almost is there are people who kind of are able to weave it throughout their day and it becomes very natural to them. And then some people who really are challenged by, what am I going to say? When am I going to say it? Like, it's kind of very different. It's almost like, I guess some of them are the more full-time creators seem to really take you along to their every single thought, every single thing.
And they're not doing very well right now. If you'll notice, a lot of those accounts, so those kinds of accounts, like the content creator as a profession, like that's my thing, is I am a content creator. I create content. What kind of content? Whatever the algorithm wants today. That's what I do. That's my content. Those people seem to do really well at like the start of the panini in like late 2019, early 2020, when everybody was home and kind of for want of something to do, the content creators came in that are just purely content creators, not like comedians doing TikTok or something like that. Like, we're not talking about Nicole Byers coming on and doing a bit. We're talking about like people that figured out how to do things that the algorithm liked and do things that kept people on the app. And they got big followings, really big followings. And some of them were able to pivot that into book deals or, whatever. But what we're finding now is a lot of those folks are now taking to social media to lament the fact that, oh, my content is, my engagement is down. Nobody's clicking on my videos. Nobody's there anymore. I haven't had much of an uptick in followers in like 6 months. And why is that? Because the world is opening back up again. And I've seen a lot of, I'm sure you have as well. I've seen a lot of social media apps come and go, but the one thing that always wins out, you can game an algorithm for a little while. You can figure out what that app was designed to do and do it for a little while. But the thing that always wins out after the app has been out for a while, or the website, or the whatever it is authenticity. That's what people stick around for. That's what people end up wanting at the end of the day. Fun dances or little skits or this or that or something will help you maybe in the beginning, but at the end of the day, people want to connect with a human being. So those content creators that are just content creators, when you're like, oh, hey, what does this person do? If you asked me, like, I'll use him as an example just because I said his name earlier. What does Hank Green do? I think we all know that Hank Green, what does he do? Well, he writes books. He's an educator. He, like we could list through, he's got charity organizations. He teaches small kids. He does, this, that, and the other. He's not a content creator. A content creator is somebody that literally is just making stuff to consume. It's sort of like the difference between, I don't know, a chef and somebody that runs around with a cart just making cotton candy fluff. Like, cotton candy fluff is fun and it has its place, but like at the end of the day, your nourishment is going to come from something else.
So let's talk about your podcast, because it's about searching for answers to life's biggest and smallest questions. And I immediately thought, oh, okay, so what are these questions? And do you have a favorite episode of something that you've explored?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I rebranded everything this year because, like I said, I wanted 2022 to be a time when all parts of my identity came together and I was just able to kind of be a whole person online. So I've been podcasting since 2009, and I've had a lot of really cool interviews over the years.
You're like an old school podcaster.
Yeah. Back when being a podcaster was like, ooh, you're a podcaster? Do you live in your mom's basement? Do you go? Yeah, back when being a podcaster was a nasty word. And I remember a couple of years ago seeing a commercial, I think it was for like some kind of medication or something, seeing a commercial, and some woman was like, I have a very busy day as a podcast producer. And I looked at my husband and I was like, what? This is a whole, what? This is a whole job now? Make me one of those. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do the levels. Give me that job. I Googled it. I was like, that's a 6-figure job. Give me that job.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah. So I've done a lot of really cool interviews over the years. I've talked to a self-professed werewolf. I have talked to, oh gosh, I've done a lot of shows, but this year I really kind of opened it up to talking to lots of different kinds of experts. I've talked to a death doula. That was a really cool conversation. I've talked to a professor in Ireland who just discusses media, like specifically like the value of reality television, like the academic need for reality television, like the value, the academic value of reality television. I've had some really cool interviews. I have one coming up tomorrow with an investigative journalist who investigates cults. So I do a lot of different kinds of interviews, mostly because I want to talk to people that are either in fields, and I've said this earlier, but I'll repeat it. I want to talk to people in fields that the listener either doesn't know anything about, they didn't even know somebody did that job. I'm very fascinated with people who like have deep wells of expertise in things that nobody even realizes is a job because we all take it for granted that somebody does that job.
Yeah.
Or somebody that's in a field with a deep well of expertise that we all think we already know everything about. Like I talked to a funeral director, Temple Ruff, and I think that, if you've been alive, you know people who are dead. If you've been alive, somebody's died around you. So, you've probably had a brush with the funeral industry, and no matter how many documentaries you've seen or how many YouTube videos you've watched, there is something about talking to an actual expert that's been doing the job, and especially that's been doing the job the past few years, where it's just like there are always new layers to uncover. And what's crazy is like how technologically advanced that industry is. Like we could become a coral reef if we wanted to. Like there's I didn't realize, but there's like the opposite of cremation. So cremation is fire, but there's the opposite of that, which is water. And you can just kind of like be dissolved. And I thought that was really cool. I know.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Who knew? I
did not.
Crazy.
So yeah, that's the thing, is that's the kind of like aha moment that I want to give my audience of like, well, that blows my mind. Mostly because I'm really interested in the fact that so much of our conversation online, in person, no matter what community you find yourself in, is so riddled with like confirmation bias. Everybody thinks that they know what one another is saying because everybody just sort of plugs your tweet into their existing framework and then says, oh, well, I already know everything about that. I don't need to ask any further questions. And I'm like, no. If you stopped and you asked a few more questions, you might be shocked at some of the answers you get. Yeah,
that's so interesting. I need to listen to some of those episodes. I had listened to the one that you had done with, of course, because I'm fascinated by marketing. So I listened to the one where you interviewed the somebody that works at VaynerMedia, which he's his own kind of empire. And so
absolutely, yeah. I talked to Haley Grant. She's vice president over at VaynerMedia, and she gave us like a really deep dive.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about that conversation is it was like, so there's a little bit of confirmation for the audience, like how much do you all actually know about us? And she's like, everything. We know absolutely everything about you.
It's
but
scary.
Right. Like it's terrifying how much they know, but like go ahead and build a bridge and get over that, because there's a whole lot of other way more interesting questions that none of you are asking about marketing. Like, you know, because that's the flip side of it, right? Everybody says when an ad comes out. I loved that line of questioning. When an ad comes out, I think the example that we used was like the M&Ms
Mm-hmm.
rebrand, where they took all the M&Ms and they gave them like a Gen Z millennial makeover or something, I guess, whatever they think the kids these days care about. And a whole bunch of people looked at that and were like, was anybody asking for this? How many layers of people did this have to go through to get out? Or you see ads that are wildly problematic, and you're like, how many people looked at this ad before this went out there? And the thing
Yeah.
is, people we assume there's somebody.
How could
We
there not
assume
be,
that there
right?
are many somebodies, that there are teams of somebodies that look at things before they go out for consumption for millions or billions of people. And the answer will shock you, because in most cases, that answer is no. No. It's a directive from some executive, and they just make it because that's what they're paid to do. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, those are the kinds of granular behind the curtain discussions that I like to have,
Yeah.
where you know parts of the stuff that we think we already know about are maybe confirmed, but then other parts blow our mind, and we're like, well, what else don't I know? I love being sort of that consummate seeker. I want to be a student forever.
Yeah. Well, you can tell. You can tell in the content that you create and what you share online. I'm very fascinated in your books and your. I met. So I messaged John and I said, I was like, okay, you're like not what I'm used to. Like your content is like the books and stuff that you read, because you read. You like read books on TikTok.
I
And
do.
and I was like,
I've been reading my book on TikTok, because it sort of blew up. It became like a viral video about a month and a half or so ago. Like, you know, a few million people saw just this one random TikTok that I did, and then that blew up. It, you know, got a couple million views, and um, you know, got me into some rooms with a whole lot of other people at a different level of publishing than I was in. And, you know, a lot of people found me from there. And so people were asking, you know, what's the book about? Could we hear some of the books? So I thought, sure. So every day for the last few weeks, I've been reading a chapter a day on TikTok Live, because I was like, hey, if you happen to tune in every single day, you will have heard the entire book for free.
well, it's awesome. And you have a great I mean, you have a great voice.
Well, thank you.
You should do audiobooks for
I
like
did the audiobook, actually.
I just mean like for other books, like just
Oh, I would
people
love
should
that. If you know
people should
anybody,
just
that is, can I tell you? Again, one of those biggest and smallest questions. That is one of the hardest industries to break into. That is,
Is it
it is
really?
so competitive. You would be shocked at the number of people that are very successful for doing things with their voice that you would think, oh, well, of course, you would be a shoo-in for that. It is so hard to break into the audiobook
You
industry.
know, I love that you're saying this because I feel like there are so many industries that are hard to break into, but we get sold, oh, there's this app and you can go on and it shows all of these audiobooks that need to be recorded and you just like apply and then you get them. It seems so easy. Like
Mhm.
there in fact there was some I found a site last year that's exactly what they do. You
Like
basically
the
can
Voice 123 and those kinds of
yeah,
apps.
like those kind I
Yeah,
didn't know
I've
these
seen
things
those.
exist, but like and they
Um,
make it seem like, "Oh, it's super simple."
and you may break through in some of those. I mean, if you just keep trying and you knock on enough doors and you do it for long enough, you'll get a yes eventually. It might not be the yes you thought it was going to be. I certainly didn't. I was writing a novel before I stopped writing that novel to write a book for Simon and Schuster about a whole different subject that I ever thought I was going to be writing a book about. But you know, so if you knock on enough doors and you keep working hard and you believe in yourself before anybody else believes in you, eventually you'll get a yes. You just have to be prepared for whatever yes that is.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's
yeah,
why That's why I love talking about the creative process, because people online can make things sound super simple and easy. And maybe it's simple, but it's not always easy, right? Like it's the showing up every single day, it's the putting in the work, it's the constant, you just have to keep improving. I mean, that's the process. Same thing with writing. So wait, The Dabbler's Guide to Witchcraft. You never thought you would write that book?
Oh no. No, 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 no,
How did
no.
that happen?
So like I said, before my podcast was called Head on Fire, it was called Inciting a Riot. And I started it when I was like 21, 22. I was in my senior year of college. I just graduated. No, I started the blog my senior year of college, and I started the podcast a couple of months after I graduated. And what I wanted to do was sort of talk about subjects in or around that new agey, spiritual, woo-woo, magical kind of space that people sort of danced around but never talked about. I wanted to literally like incite a riot. And I did that for a long time. I kind of took a bit of a hiatus between 2016 and 2019. There was just a lot going on in 2016, and it was real bad for my mental health. And so I slowed way down. I did like 100 episodes those first couple of years, and then I did like 20 over the next 3 years. And then around the 10-year anniversary, so 2019, I said, well, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give it kind of like one last try and see, the internet sort of changed. A lot of people have changed. Maybe we can have different kinds of conversations, because I was already on that path to trying to find a way to have these bigger, bolder conversations that Head on Fire has become. So I came back. I said, you know what? I'm going to make this an interview show, because it used to be these deep dive, research driven shows that were just basically me talking for an hour about a subject that I thought was really interesting and I was very passionate about, and would do these deep dives, but always try to gear them back towards that sort of spiritual seeker audience. And from 2019 to the end of 2021, I did that, and an audience started to find me. It was slow, but an audience started to come back. It was nowhere near the audience that I had. Anyways, during all of that time, I'm still blogging. And a blog that I wrote about cultural appropriation and authentic representation of minority and oppressed cultures when it comes to talking about their own cultures and spiritual traditions. The fact that there are a few of these sort of new age spiritual publishers out there that do publish books. I mean, it's a very small community, but there's a whole aisle at the bookstore for these people. I mean, comparatively speaking, because a lot of people are interested in those kinds of topics, at least during Halloween. And these niche publishers that publish the majority of these books typically prefer to publish books by white authors, and will go so far as to give book contracts to white authors, but then give them a pseudonym that sounds like a Black or brown person or a person from that culture. They will give Native American sounding names to a white lady living in the Northeast, and publish books by her, that kind of thing. I wrote a big blog about that, had a whole bunch of research, did some interviews about that. It went viral. And I got approached by Simon & Schuster, and they said, hey, we have a new imprint that we're starting to uplift voices in this sort of spiritual community. But we do take what you said to heart, and we want to make sure that we don't screw that up. So do you know how we could maybe find some of those people? So this is actually something I haven't talked about publicly yet. So all of those conversations started because for several months, I was working with them to try to guide them in the right direction. Like, hey, when we Google this, this is who we're finding. And I'm like, that's great. Here's who you need to be talking to. So I gave them like lists and lists and lists. And I was talking to like a bunch of authors that I knew, and were like, hey, in this category, like who should be the voice, who should, I don't know anybody that from this particular, I don't know, practitioners of Taoism or something. Like, who in the Tao, who are those people? Who are those voices that should be uplifted that maybe aren't getting the spotlight that they deserve? And so I worked with Simon & Schuster for several months to try to guide them to get those people book deals. And then along the way, they said, hey, we like you too. Have you ever considered writing a book? And I said, oh, if I ever wrote a book, you wouldn't want to publish it because it wouldn't sell. And they were like, why? And I said, oh, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people do in and around the spiritual community under the guise of authentic spirituality that's just fraud, or it's lacking critical thought or something like that. And if I ever wrote a book about that, I would basically tear the 101 sort of style book apart and upend it. And they were like, oh, we want to hear more.
Oh my gosh.
So I put together an outline and I sent it to them, and I pitched them on what ended up becoming the Dabbler's Guide to Witchcraft. It was originally called, it didn't have that sort of witchcraft sounding name or bent in the beginning. It was called Ethical Dabbling. And it was a book about, it still is, it just has a title that is very SEO friendly. But it was specifically geared towards people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, and are sort of looking to find a version of spirituality that works for them, that is informed by science and culture and society, that is appreciative of cultures and tries very hard to be inclusive, and that kind of thing. So that's the book. That's what that became. It was the culmination of 11 years of me using my platform to sort of poke at all of the stuff that people don't really want to talk about out loud. Well, no, let's put it down. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fact that there are frauds in our community, that there are people bilking people out of lots of money under the guise that, like, I can connect you to your dead Aunt Sally. There's a lot of people out there that, will tell you that, I've seen sexual predators in all sorts of communities, like that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that people talk about amongst one another, but never want to put in a book. Because I think when people think that if we acknowledge it, if we put it in black and white, if we admit that these things exist in our community, that, I don't know, the entire community will fall apart. And I don't agree with that. I think that if we criticize some of the less favorable parts of our community, all we're going to do is excise the bad parts and make the rest better.
So how was the writing process for you in writing this book? I mean, these are big ideas.
Yeah, they are. It was quick, actually, because like I said, I mean, I had been talking about these things and researching these things for many, 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 many years. And I kind of had always kept a little thing in my notes app, like, if I were to ever write a book, I would want it to include a chapter on this or this or this. So it wasn't hard to come up with what needed to be in the book. In fact, the first draft, I needed to turn in a draft. It was a quick turnaround, 6 months. They gave me 6 months to write the first draft before manuscript had to be submitted. And I got it done in about 4.
Oh, wow.
Something like that. It was like due in February and I got it done in December. So yeah, it was quick, but then it went out to beta readers. It went out to a lot of beta readers because I knew, given the history that I had with my former show and kind of my reputation for being somebody that takes a topic and picks it apart and drills down and is like, okay, here's the why behind the what on this. Given sort of my reputation for that, my editor said that I have been called both the Ronan Pharaoh and the Adam ruins everything of the spiritual community. So given,
oh my gosh,
given that was my reputation, I knew that I needed to get this book correct if I was going to write it. So it had a very thorough beta read. I think I had like something like 20 something beta readers. And with lots of different areas of expertise that dwarf my own in all of these areas. And, I think the thing that I could tell anybody who's writing anything is to make friends with other better writers than you and be very humble about feedback, because people only give you feedback if they, one, know you're up for it, and two, know that you are worth investing in so that you can be better. They recognize that the work that you're putting out should be out in the world. They just want it to be the best version of it. I think people get really in their feelings when they receive critique. So after I got all of that feedback back, then I had the second draft, and I added another 20-something thousand words to it. So I can really hone those. And then but the entire process, I think, was about a year. It was 6 months for manuscript submission. So I gave myself enough of a chunk of time that before the official submission of the manuscript, I was actually on the second draft because I'd had all of that beta read. And then it was copy edit, copy edit, copy edit, 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 edit. And then the book came last September.
That's so exciting. And
now that's nonfiction. Nonfiction is easy. Fiction, man's a buster.
I was just gonna say, so you write poetry. Your other book is poetry, and now you're writing a novel.
I am. Yeah, finishing. I'm on the last chapter, thankfully.
Really?
Yeah.
So what are the differences? I mean, how is writing that first book compared to writing this novel? What are your thoughts on the whole process, and what are the biggest differences that you've seen?
So with people say that there are two different kinds of writers, that there's plotters and there's pantsers. You plot out, you have really nice detailed drafts, or really nice detailed outlines, and you know exactly sort of what needs to happen and where it needs to go and what points are going to make where and that kind of thing. And that's a plotter. That's somebody that's got it all plotted out, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And then there's a pantser. And that's somebody that just makes it up, that flies by the seat of their pants. Sort of like, well, I want to write a book about this, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. I feel like there's maybe a couple of beats I want to hit, and I don't know how I'm going to do it or how I'm going to get there, but I know I'm going to get there. And it turns out I'm a plotter when it comes to nonfiction, and I am a pantser when it comes to fiction. So I write very slowly when it comes to fiction, because I very much overthink every line. I lack a lot of confidence there, mostly because I'm like, okay, well, should it be like this or should it be like this? I'm very in my head. Plus I work a full-time job still on top of everything. So, the most productive writing hours for me are somewhere between 10 and 2. And unfortunately, I'm working during that time. So it's a lot of trying to shove writing into different parts of my day. So that means that a lot of it is very slow going, but we're almost there. There.
That's so exciting. I don't know if you've ever read Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. It's basically about the writing process, but it's a beautiful book. And I heard her do an interview, and she talked about, she kind of talked about when you're writing a novel, when you're writing pieces, everyone asks her about plot points and this and that, and she always kind of brings it back to, it's about the characters. Your characters lead the story, and you can tell, oh no, this character wouldn't do that. This isn't the direction that they would take. So she basically talked about how it's so important to really breathe life into the characters, and they will take you through the journey that it needs to be. And it's
that very much resonates with me. I'm a character first kind of author. And as I get to know these characters and really solidify their personalities, I'm already making notes about okay, on the second draft, I need to transform these chapters. And now that I know who these people are, now I can go back and Neil Gaiman has a sentence that he says, and I'm going to butcher it. But it's something like, your first draft is you write down everything that happens, and your second draft is you make it look like you did it on purpose. Your first draft, just forgive yourself. It's going to be garbage, but you just need to get down everything that happens or all of the points that you want to make. And then your second draft, give yourself some space. Maybe have a couple of people read that first draft, kind of bounce some ideas off of other folks, but just realize that it was a starting point. It's not the end. And even if you're somebody that gets it traditionally published, you are going to have umpty 11 edits between the version that you wrote in the beginning and the version that's in the book. So just don't be so precious with it. It's going to change, and it needs to change. It needs to.
Yeah, you have to get it all out in order to create what needs to be created. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges in writing is to get out that horrible first draft, to get out the crap that it needs to be, just so it's out of your head, and then you figure it out. But there's no other way. You have to go through the process. Oh my gosh, I know I have to let you go. And but I do have a question, because I love that you said you have a full-time job. What do you do for a living?
I am a fraud investigator.
I heard you say that on that video, and I said that is not at all what I would guess that this man does for a living. But I love that, because so I fully believe that people should do what they love, even if it's not their full-time job, and that we can all explore our creativity no matter what. And so I love that you have all of these pieces. And for those of you that are listening, you're probably like, wait a second, I thought Don does this full time, because he has a podcast, he has a book, and all these pieces. And so this is just a testament to, you can explore your creativity and writing and podcasting and all of those pieces while you are earning an income doing something else, should you choose.
Well, and I think that that's also a really important lesson. And I did a follow-up to that viral video of mine, because people are like, oh my gosh, your book went viral. You hit the book jackpot and all of that. And I think that, again, this is one of those things that people think they know everything about, but they don't actually. Most of the people on the New York Times bestseller list, like most of, the books that you like, from authors that you like, that even if they end up on the New York Times bestseller list, those people probably still have full-time jobs, or at least they do something else. I don't think that people realize how little money is in publishing. So like, say you make a 6-figure book advance, you make $120,000 book advance. These days, that gets broken up into 3, sometimes even 4 chunks. You might get one chunk at the beginning, but that might be $30,000. Could you live an entire year on $30,000 pre-tax? You haven't even taken taxes out. Do you make $30,000 a year? Could you live on that? Could you quit your full-time job and write this? Because then they give you a year to write the book, usually something like that, 6 months to a year. And then you don't get another check until you've written the book and they accept the book. Then you might get another bit of that when the book comes out, which could be a year, 2 years later. And then that final fourth isn't coming to authors these days until 6 months to a year after the book has already been out.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you might make $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 book advance, and that sounds like a great payday, but you're not quitting your job over that money. And unless you happen to fall backwards into becoming the next Stephen King, you're probably going to need to keep a job, because, it's so rare. It really is so rare. The average book in America sells 500 copies. And to be a success in your genre might be 3,000 copies, 5,000 copies, 10,000 copies, which is not quit your job money. So I think people need to temper their expectations. You can be a successful author, a truly successful author by any standard, and still need a job.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's almost like I think about when comedians talk about, oh, if you can do anything else, don't just do something else. Don't be a comedian. But like, it's the love of it. It is the love of it. It's the pure love of it. And I think with writing, for a lot of writers, I mean, I guess, everything is relative. It depends on who you're talking to. But what I study a lot of writers. I love reading books about writing. And I feel like the constant is, you have to love writing.
Oh,
you have to love the process. You have to love, writing horrible drafts. And that's that's part of the whole process of writing. All right, my last question to you, because I always ask every one of my guests this question about creativity. Um, for our audience, what is one activity that you can share 10 minutes or less that will spark someone's creativity?
Oh my gosh, something you can do in less than 10 minutes that will spark somebody's creativity. Um, watch a movie by Hayao Miyazaki. I don't know. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I feel like there's something in there for everybody. He's the guy behind Studio Ghibli, so My Neighbor Totoro or something like that. I don't know. Look at great art, whatever you think
Mm.
that is. Look at great art, but look at like a lot of it all at once. So like a movie or go to a museum. I mean, go to museum websites have their entire collection up that you can kind of wander through from the privacy of your own home. Go look at that. I don't know. I'm just, oh gosh, 10 minutes or less. Work
There
out.
we go.
Go for a run. Obvious.
Ooh.
Like be physical. Because when we're trying to force an idea, we get really stuck. So for me, I have to work out before. I have friends that are like, no, I get up in the morning and, I have full-time author friends that are very, very successful. And they're like, no, no, no. Before I do anything else, I get up, I go to my keyboard and I write X number of words. And I'm like, I would not write a single word, not a single word if I did that, because I need to get my brain going.
Yeah.
So do a quick bit of exercise, get your mind sort of blank. I don't meditate. I can't meditate. I can't sit there and be still and quiet, but I can go work out. And that kind of gets my brain into that sort of negative headspace. I cannot tell you the number of short stories that I've written at the gym, because I've been at the gym and an idea will just sort of dislodge itself. And I'm like, I need to get this down now.
I love it. Oh, it's so true. And yes, I am the same way. I'm like, I get out of bed quick, and I'm doing my workout. Like it's
Yeah,
like the
I
first,
have to
the
go.
day does not feel right without
No,
it. You
no,
don't
it's
know.
like leaving the house and realizing you don't have your like wedding ring on or something like that. It's like, oh, what did I not do today? I feel very naked today. Something feels wrong. It's 10 a.m. and I haven't been to the gym. I don't like that. Yeah. So
Oh
I don't
my
know, do
gosh.
something physical. Or if you're already a very physical person, do whatever the opposite of that is.
Yeah.
So do that for 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh. I love it. All right, Dawn, it was so wonderful to get to connect with you. Thank you so much for chatting with me. It was such a delight.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Kate. Thanks so much. You have a good day.
And where's the best way for people to find you? Is it your podcast?
Oh yeah, so I'm on social media, all forms of social media. The handle is the same. It's at Head on Fire Pod, because the podcast is sort of the main thing that people come and find me for. But yeah, I'm TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. There's a website, but it's just show notes for the podcast. So you could also find get Head on Fire podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you download shows. I promise.
Wherever you download your podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.